How do you live with confidence? This is one of the big questions that a lot of us are wrestling with in life. How do I become a more confident person? How do I become a more peaceful person? How do I live with a greater sense of purpose, a greater sense of joy? Confidence is essential for us. And if you think about this big picture, if we were to live really confident lives over a long period of time, not just a couple days, not just even a few weeks, but if those months turned into years, and then we began to have confident decades, some amazing things would happen in our lives. Now, one of the most important things for us to recognize as we want to become more confident people is that there's an incredible power in the words that we say. In fact, our words, whether we recognize this or not, our words may actually define and design the path that we take in life. So as we look at how we can become more confident, the first thing is I want you to recognize that your words may carry further than you understand. I'm thinking back to when I was 11 years old. I was on the golf course with my dad. We were on hole 18. For those of you who don't play golf, that is the final hole on the golf course. And these people in front of us were taking a really, really long time. And for my 11-year-old brain, I just wanted to take a swing towards the fairway. But my dad was all about golf etiquette, and so he wanted them to be able to get on the green, finish putting, and then we could go forward. And so as we stood there waiting, I said, in what I consider to be a conversational tone, "Dad, what is taking these people so long? They are going so slow." And I don't even think my dad heard me in that moment because he was just practicing his swing. He was locked in. We got down there to the point where we were going to chip onto the green. And at that point, these people suddenly walked out from behind some trees. And they said, "Did one of you say that we were going too slow up here?" And my dad looked and he said, "Well, I didn't say anything. Dave, did you say something?" And I realized, he really had been locked in on his practice swing. And I had a moment right then where I had to decide, because these people looked really angry, and my 11-year-old self, I thought, man, maybe I got us into trouble. And so I made a decision right then, and I lied. And I said, "No, I didn't say anything back there." Wish I could change that to this day. They walked off saying, "You guys really shouldn't be saying anything about the speed that people go in golf." But what I realized in that moment is that my voice carried a lot further than I really believed that it had. When I was growing up, my parents told me often, you have a loud voice. Your voice will carry places in life. And so you need to be thoughtful about the things that you say and also be careful about the things that you don't say. And I think sometimes when we talk about our voices carrying or the things that we say, we think about, well, I don't want to speak negatively about that person. I don't want that to come back to me. I don't want gossip to go out. And all of that's good. But sometimes what we forget is that there's an importance to the words that we speak about our own life, about our own reality, about our own situation. And what I want you to know is this, is that your words may carry your life further than you would have ever expected. In fact, in the book of Proverbs, it says this about our words. It says, "In the tongue is the power of life and death." There's a moment when the Lord talks to his people and he says, "See, today I set before you life and death. Now choose life." How do we choose life? It doesn't necessarily begin out there. It actually begins right here. So for you and I, what does it look like for us to begin to build more confidence in who we are? Well, ultimately it goes into recognizing the confidence that we have in who God is. And that's where we want to really dig into today, is what does it look like for us to declare the goodness of God so that our voices, so that our words, so that our tongue is communicating life again and again and again, because your words are going to carry further than you would understand. So how do you build confidence? Well, there's a pathway through your words. There's the power of declaration. And that's what I want us to look at for just a moment today is what is the power of declaration? In Psalm 27:1, David begins with these words, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" Have you ever had a time where you felt like your words got away from you? Well, what if instead of our words getting away from us, what if we actually cultivated a relationship with our words purposefully and we began to build a life of confidence on those words, on the words of truth, on the words of reality? And so one of the things that I will consistently do now that I didn't used to do is I will speak words of life. It's not just enough for me to think some of those thoughts of life. I'd want to actively speak because I understand that my tongue has the power of life and death. You have a question there, which is why did David declare the Lord's purpose of being his light and his salvation? How did David's declaration affect his faith? Why was it that David, even though, as he says in verse 3, that an army could encamp against him, that war could break out against him, why is it that the foundational truth of who God is, why did that create a sense of confidence in David's life? Now, think about it like this. Not one of us in the world wants to get that communication from the IRS saying you're being audited. What we might want to do, though, is we might actually want to audit our words. Audit the things that our mouths are speaking. Audit what we're saying on a day-to-day basis because the direction of our words is often defining the direction of our lives. What does this look like for us? Well, believe two simple questions that you can reflect on, and then we'll come back and dig into this a little bit more. Two simple questions. Number one is this: what are you speaking about life to yourself? What are you speaking about life to yourself? And sometimes some other people are eavesdropping on those conversations when you're hanging out with friends. And, maybe you're saying, I really believe things are going in a great place, believe that things are going in a great direction. I'm excited about these things. Or maybe it sounds a little bit more negative. Things aren't ever going the way that I want. Things aren't ever going to work out for me. Feels like things are just always going to work against me. What's the direction of your life? And how can your tongue begin to direct you in a better way? The second one is this: what are ways that you can begin to speak life? If you are going to begin to speak life, it says that in the tongue is the power of life and death. How could you begin to speak life more consistently this week? I want you to reflect on those things, and then we'll continue forward. Well, as we talked about, there's an incredible power in your declaration. There's an incredible power in what you are speaking on the day today. And it has so much to do with the words that are coming out of your mouth. What we want to do is we want to communicate consistently a declaration that is strong, a declaration that is confident, because the more that we speak life, the more that we're going to experience life and light and joy and peace in our lives. I love how in the book of John it says this. It says, in him there was no darkness. Who's that talking about? Talking about Jesus. In him there was no darkness. In other words, he is light. He is light. What's the first thing that we find that God brings into creation? It's light. In the book of Genesis, he is the light of the world. That's how he's described in the Gospels. He's the light of the world. Jesus is the brightness of life. Once again, in him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. For you and I, it is essential to understand that Jesus' character is light. What he's going to consistently do is he's going to bring us into a greater level of light, that there's a better path for us when we're experiencing the Lord as light. Now, some of you have been in places before where it was really scary because things were really dark. Some of you have just been in challenging situations where things were really dark in life. I remember when I was a kid having an incredible fear of the dark. I don't know if you were like me in that way, but I was afraid at night. Sometimes if I woke up at 2 or 3 in the morning, I was afraid of monsters under my bed, monsters in the closet. I was so afraid of the dark. There can be so much fear that happens for us in life in the things that we can't see. In fact, some of the greatest stressors that we have in life happen when we begin to focus on the things that are outside of our control, or what we might say, the things that are in the dark, the places of negativity, the places of doubt. And so what we want to do is we want to come back to a very simple belief that we can declare. And so what I want to encourage you to do is understand there is a power in your declaration. There's a power in your declaration that the Lord is your light. Let me say it like this. In Psalm 119, it says it like this: your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Sometimes I don't have as much light as I would like to have in life. Sometimes I can't see as much as I would like to see, but I'm not going to focus on the darkness. I'm going to focus on the light. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and I'm going to trust in the words that the Lord has given me. I'm going to trust that the Lord will give me light for my path. And so there's an incredible power when I come back to understanding who God is and the light that he gives me as I walk forward. That even though the way may seem dark, that I know that he is still with me. He is still for me in those places. And in your declaration, here it is, saying it out loud: the Lord is my light. It's not just simply saying the Lord is light, it's saying the Lord is my light. So 2 questions that I want you to reflect on, and then we will continue forward. Number 1 is this: what does it mean for the Lord to be your light? What does it mean for the Lord to be your light personally? And then 2, reflect on a time when the Lord was your light. How did you see him guide you through darkness at that time? What did you experience with the Lord as he brought you through maybe a difficult situation, maybe through negativity, doubt, whatever he brought you through? How did the Lord bring you through, and how did you experience him as your light? Reflect on that, and then we'll continue forward together. Well, as we said, there is a great power in your declaration. And when you and I live with a strong declaration in life, something really wonderful begins to happen. We begin to increase our confidence. We begin to increase our joy and increase our peace. I love that David says, the Lord is my light and my salvation. A lot of times I've heard believers simply talk about the salvation of the Lord, but it sounds really impersonal for them. It sounds really disconnected from their own lives, almost as if they're not familiar with their own salvation story of how much the Lord has saved them from and what the Lord has saved them from. You know, salvation is something that really comes out of need. Like, we need to be saved. I remember a few years ago, I was climbing up Mount Kilimanjaro with one of my closest friends, and we were on the final day. It's a multi-day hike. And as we were going on the final day, they woke us up at midnight to take our ascent. And what happened was our water bottles got to the point where it was so cold up there that they completely froze and we couldn't get a sip of water. And so while we were really excited to get to the top of the mountain and see everything that you see up there, and it's unbelievably beautiful at the top of Kilimanjaro. Just some of the most stunning views I've ever seen in my life. And yet at the same time, I had this thing on the inside of me that was saying, I need water. Like, I am so thirsty that I need water. And I believe that is so much for us from a soul level, from our spirit crying out to God saying, I need something that I can't get to myself. It seems like all the sources are frozen for me. I've tried this. I've tried a lot of different things in life, but nothing is satisfying me. Nothing is bringing me into a better place. Nothing is taking me, as Paul would say in the New Testament, from death to life. I need something that I can't get for myself. I remember when we finally got back and I was able to take my first sip. Oh, that first sip was amazing. I believe that there is something so significant when you're in need and then you get to experience the goodness of what you've been needing. That there is a beautiful gift that the Lord has for us in his salvation. David says, the Lord is my light and my salvation. And when you think about the confidence that gave him, knowing that the Lord was the one who would save him from the difficult situations in his life, how did that shift David's perspective, even in his most challenging moments? How did that change the way that David experienced the battle lines? How did that change how David would face his own anxiety and his own sense of grief and his own fear in life? I believe that it had so much to do with David understanding the goodness of God as his salvation. I want to ask you a couple questions for you to reflect on when it comes to knowing the Lord and speaking declaration that the Lord is your salvation, that the Lord is my salvation. Okay, so here it is. First question is, what does it mean for the Lord to be your salvation? What does it mean for the Lord to be your salvation? Why is it important for you to know the Lord as your salvation? Why is it important for you to know the Lord as your salvation? Not just that he gives you salvation, but that the Lord is your salvation. And then number 3, what has the Lord saved you from? Reflect on those, and then we'll continue forward. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? And then David says, the Lord is the strength of my life. When you think about the strength of your life, my question would be, who are you trusting for strength on the day today? Do you always have to go back into your own reservoir and find your strength there? Or do you find strength in who the Lord is? There's a fascinating thing. You may have actually done this. You may have experienced this. You may have gone to one of these moments, but at some weddings, they have a thing where people are putting on headphones. And as they put on headphones, everybody on the dance floor is dancing, but you can't hear the music. The only people who can hear the music are the people who have their headphones on. And they call this a silent disco. And I believe that part of the reason why David was able to do the things that he did in life is that he was listening to a different soundtrack than anybody else. The declaration that he made in life became a soundtrack for him, and it changed the way that he went about life. And so while other people would have stepped back, you think about the story of David and Goliath. He showed up with headphones of faith on. He showed up listening to the reality of what God was willing to do in and through his life. And so because of that, David didn't back down in the difficult moment. In fact, he stepped forward and he spoke with such confidence. This is what he said to Goliath in 1 Samuel 17:45. You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied this day. The Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. That David had a confidence that the Lord was his strength. And he could look back throughout all of his life and see how the Lord had consistently showed up for him, even in the most impossible situations. When you and I walk forward with confidence in God, it is because we are expecting that he will give us strength that we could not give ourselves. So, a couple questions for you. One, what does it mean for the Lord to be your strength? Two, when have you experienced the Lord strengthening you? And then three, how would you like to see the Lord strengthen you in this next chapter of life? And I want to encourage you to make sure that you're listening to the soundtrack of heaven, the soundtrack of faith, the soundtrack of hope, the soundtrack of light, salvation, and strength. That is the path the Lord has for you. So go ahead and reflect on that, and I'll be back here in just a minute to wrap things up. Well, I think we can agree that there is a great power in your declaration, that in the tongue is the power of life and death. And so this week, here's what I would like you to do. One, I want you to begin to declare three simple things. One, the Lord is my light. Two, the Lord is my salvation. Three, the Lord is the strength of my life. Consistently declare out loud at least 3 times a day who the Lord is to you. And then two, what I want to encourage you to do as well is just notice your speech. In fact, you might do a speech audit. You might just simply reflect each day, have I been speaking more positive words, words that are leading to life, or have my words been more negative? Are they leading more towards the way of death? What we want to do is we want to be people who are growing in confidence, growing in faith, growing in life, growing in love. How do we do that? It comes back to the power of our words. What would happen if you and I began to declare who God is in our lives? What if we began to declare who he is each and every day? I wonder what might happen in your life as you continue to speak out loud the words of life, and how that is going to shape and shift your level of confidence in this life. So go ahead, practice your declaration this week. I'm looking forward to seeing you next time.